Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today I am picking up right where we left off from last week in period problems. What do these signs and symptoms actually mean? What's common? What's normal? What's actually optimal? Why is all of this stuff going on? And then also today, I'm going to finish my list of symptoms, and then I'm going to really zoom out and talk about a variety of things to really look at when it comes to hormone health, our periods, some natural things, some things that may be recommended to you, and maybe some pros and cons of those, some things to maybe think about. Knowledge is power, as I always like to say. So the more information that you have, the better equipped you are to make the best decision for you and your body, because all of our bodies are different. All of our lives are different, which means that different support is going to look different for all of us. And so please don't guilt shame yourself or anyone else, any other woman for that matter, in the choices that they make for their health, their body, their life, all that kind of stuff here. So if you haven't listened to part one, please go listen to part one first and then come back, because once again, I'm building right off of where we left off from the last episode here at part one. So let's talk about the fatigue and low energy as the next symptom that I have here. So I want to acknowledge that when we look at our cycles overall, in our luteal phase, after that kind of ovulation piece, where during ovulation, all of our hormones should start to come up, most women are going to feel their best. Not everyone, and there's nothing wrong with you if you don't feel your best during ovulation. Everyone's body's a little bit different. Some people's bodies handle the influx of hormones really well, which is where the increase in libido and energy and increased capacity for communication and projects and critical thinking and some of these other things can really come into play here. And some people's bodies don't process that the same way. Either way is fine. You should not feel horrible either way. If you feel great, amazing. But you also should not have a stark drop in your energy if you do get that really good kind of feeling during ovulation. You should not have a stark contrast within a few days in your energy all of a sudden tanking. That is usually going to be progesterone related. Your progesterone dropping too fast in relation to your estrogen. But in our luteal phase, let's think 7 to 10 days before the start of our periods, we're going to be a little bit more tired. That is what is supposed to happen. You're not going to feel the same level of energy. Oftentimes you're not going to feel the same strength or physical capacity. Now, it shouldn't be greatly diminished, but it should go down a little bit. And that is normal. That is okay. That is optimal. Progesterone is a calming hormone, and that is what is higher during our luteal phase. Our body temperature is also going to increase during our luteal phase, which can, for many women, lead to not bad sleep, but maybe not quite as good sleep. Now, if you start sleeping very poorly, that's definitely a sign of low progesterone during your luteal phase. But if it's just a little bit, you just don't feel quite as energized, you don't feel like you can quite do the same amount of things or push yourself the same amount, normal, optimal, that is what is supposed to happen. So let's keep that in mind. The energy is going to be just a tiny bit lower. You're not going to feel quite as good. It's the higher levels of estrogen that feel really good for most of us. So if you do get really tired before your period, if you get really tired during your period, also a little dip in energy during your period is also normal. Your body's doing a lot inside. You're shedding your uterine lining, you're bleeding, there's a localized inflammation going on that should be happening. It shouldn't be crazy. But, feeling a little bit more aware of that lower part of your belly during your period, not saying cramping should happen, but just being more aware of that area of your body absolutely
normal, optimal, what is supposed to happen. So a little dip, totally fine, totally normal. Anything more than that, not so normal. And so what we look at this typically, we look at blood sugar regulation can play a really big role, especially if you've got crazy cravings that come up before your period and you're eating all of the sugar, all of the junk, all of the starchy carbs that you want. Blood sugar, especially at this time, and I'll say blood sugar is a big problem for a lot of people in general, especially women, though. So we really need to take a look at blood sugar regulation. I like to do this nutritionally from a starting point, especially looking at protein and fiber intake. Oftentimes, we'll recommend protein first, then fiber. There's research to back both protein, then fiber, fiber, then protein. Depends on who you talk to, what research you look at. I also think it just depends on the person. We typically like to go protein first. Most women are vastly under consuming protein, which is why we start there. Then we look at fiber intake. And then if that's really not cutting it, we'll swap them. And some women do better with the fiber first, then the protein. Everyone is different. All of our bodies are different. There is no one size fits all for a lot of this. The second thing that can often come up is thyroid dysfunction. If your thyroid is having a hard time and the increase of stress leading up to your period can really tank your energy. Thyroid issues, thyroid dysfunction, is not usually just a thyroid issue. Typically, we want to look at all of the pieces that impact your thyroid before the thyroid itself. So we might want to look at nutrient deficiencies. We might want to look at liver and drainage pathways. Your gut health is a big one. Your stress levels. What is the state of your nervous system? All of that plays a really big role here. This can also be related to nutrient deficiencies. B vitamin nutrient deficiencies, a big one. So many people supplement with B12. Typically don't love just supplementing with B12. If we're seeing on labs that B vitamins are depleted, a good multivitamin, B complexes can be a hit or miss. For a lot of women, it can cause a lot of acne and skin issues, in which case a B complex isn't going to cut it. But a good quality multivitamin with some good B vitamins, typically most people are going to do better with methylated B vitamins, whether you have any genetic mutations or not. Almost all of us do better on methylated B vitamins. If you notice your multivitamin has folic acid as the source of your B9, of your folate, throw it away. It is not a good quality supplement. You cannot absorb folic acid. Your body has nothing, it can do nothing with that. It's just going to come right out of your body. And we're not going to see improvement in your B9 specifically. Iron. If you've got iron issues, and please do not willy-nilly supplement with iron or things that have a lot of iron in it. This includes your organ complexes. This is your liver, beef liver supplements, your quote unquote blood builders that are now so popular out there. Please fully check your iron levels. And do not base this just on your ferritin levels. I did a whole episode on iron and ferritin. Go listen to that if you want some more insight into that. But you can also do some really significant damage to your body if you over supplement with iron, especially if your body doesn't need it. We also want to look at all the cofactors needed to absorb iron. A lot of people actually do have enough iron, but it can be an absorption issue because they don't have all the necessary cofactors to absorb it. So that's another thing. You need to look at labs. Everyone is different. You need to keep a close eye on iron levels because they are really important, and we really want them to be in a good quality range. Too high and or too low can cause very similar problems. So we really want to look at that. And then sometimes the low energy is a drainage issue. Your poor little liver and the rest of your drainage pathways are processing out this shift in your hormones, and your body's struggling to do that. And typically that's going to be a drainage pathway dysfunction type issue. So looking at drainage pathways, supporting those drainage pathways, castor oil packs, rebounding, saunas, Epsom salt baths, lymphatic work, dry brushing, coffee enemas at the right dosage as well. Those can all be supportive, and it really just depends on the person here. Okay, next symptom, sleep issues. So kind of going right off of that. Once again, if you're also in your 30s, you don't have to be in your 30s, you can be younger than this too. But especially if you're in your 30s and your hormones are seemingly pretty good. If you start to notice your sleep starts to get worse, once again, about 7 to 10 days before the start of your period, shortly after ovulation. If you're in your 40s, this may or may not already be happening to you. It's typically a little bit more obvious in your 40s for some people, but this absolutely starts for a lot of women in their 30s. This is your lower progesterone levels in comparison to your estrogen. When your progesterone falls too low or too low in comparison to your estrogen levels, sleep issues, more trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, just feeling like the quality of your sleep is not as good. This can almost always be traced back to progesterone. This is so big, and progesterone is the first thing that starts to drop when we go into perimenopause. Once again, this is why I love tracking our hormones and tracking our cycles, because if we start to consistently see this, and I'll tell you, typically it's going to start somewhere between day 17 to 21 of your cycle. And all of a sudden, I mean, it's for most women, it's a decent dip. But sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to keep track of that. This is where writing it down, having an app, putting it on your calendar, whatever it might be, this can go a really long way. And this is one of the things that we do with so many of our clients is, hey, for the next month, let's see. For the next 2 months, let's see when these symptoms pop up. And I can tell you exactly what is happening and why. And this lower progesterone levels leading up to the start of your period is so common, especially with high stress levels. Once again, cortisol goes up, one of your major stress hormones. One of the first things that's going to happen after that is your progesterone is going to drop. And in a world full of stress in our lives, inside stress, outside stress, big picture stress, little stresses, all of the stresses, this is a really big deal. And some progesterone support, which once again, I'm gonna tie this back in at the very end here, but some basic progesterone support can go a long way. Sometimes more cortisol support, by the way, can also go a long way with this, because if we regulate your cortisol levels a little bit more, then the progesterone will sometimes naturally just come right back up. So sometimes it's a 2-tiered strategy. Sometimes we start with one versus the other. Kind of depends on the person and their situation, but that's almost always progesterone and or cortisol. Usually it's both, that are playing a role in these sleep issues right before your period. Okay, ovulation pain. This is another one where prostaglandins can play a really big role in this. And if you have too many or your body's not processing those out, this goes to drainage pathways, can result in ovulation pain. This might look like cramping. Some people feel like a very specific pain it's like some women are very in tune and their body, when they actually ovulate, they'll feel a sharp and sudden pain. Typically, once again, this is going to be the sharp contraction of the uterus that's prostaglandin led. So supporting prostaglandins can go a long way. Overall, if you have very high inflammation levels, that can also play a role in a lot of this. And if you have this ovulation pain, a lot of times there's a lot of systemic inflammation going on that's exacerbating this. Endometriosis is another piece of this that we kind of look at. And if you've got a lot of endometrial kind of tissue, and if you have endometriosis, and I always have a hard time with this one, adenomyosis, which is endo adjacent, we can call it. These things are very similar in nature in that you can have this ovulation pain. We've worked with a lot of women with both, including looping in PCOS, PMOS in there too. Almost always there's a parasite overgrowth component to this, and addressing the parasite overgrowth issues and all of the reasons why those happen in the first place, that can make a significant difference in this kind of period pain, endometriosis pain, like any of that kind of pain, PMOS, PCOS kind of pain, all of that kind of stuff here. Brown blood starting to start your period and or to end your period. If you get that like darker, and it really does look more brown than red. Once again, for some women, it's kind of like a little bit of spotting ahead of like the actual real red blood, period blood that's starting. And or even once the red blood's kind of done, maybe you have an extra day or two and it's mostly kind of brown type blood. This is another sign of low progesterone. And once again, progesterone support usually goes a long way. We always want to look at the bigger picture, especially the cortisol component to this, but usually it's almost always progesterone related. Okay, 3 big ones here to really wrap up. The first one is hormonal breakouts that I want to talk about. I will tell you, I would not consider myself a skincare expert by any stretch of the imagination. I have a lot of decent knowledge around skincare, and I'm going to talk about a lot of these things. Definitely on the big on the inside components of acne and other skin type of issues. We want to look at products and what we're putting on our face and on our skin and using in our hair, all of that kind of stuff. But a company that does, I think, a really, really good job of this is a company called Clearstem. Yes, we are an affiliate with them. I'll tell you, I've also been using them since shortly after their company began. Which is quite some years, and I have followed along with them. I have used the vast majority of their topical skincare products. I am such a massive fan. I have seen such a big difference in my skin using their skincare products. Didn't fix everything because there was some inside stuff going on too. But I've also seen this with a lot of clients as well, where they switch a basic face wash or a moisturizer. All these little things go such a long way. And the 2 of the founders, Christina and Danielle, they have a lot of some really, really great knowledge. Not only do they really take pride in their company and the products that they produce, the testing that goes into all of their products is extremely extensive. They also have a ton of education and free resources. So I will put a link down below in the show notes or in the caption to check them out. They have a great pore clogger like checker that's completely free. If you go onto their website, it's right at the top. You'll see like pore clogging ingredient tracker or checker, and you can just copy and paste ingredients for any of your skincare products, put it in, and I'll tell you if there's any pore clogging ingredients. Now, it's not extensive where it's going to be like, oh, maybe this isn't good for your skin, or maybe this. It's just more generalized as like, has this been shown to clog your pores and contribute to acne? That can go a long way. It doesn't fix everything, and it can go a really long way. They do have some good supplements on there. They're not right for everyone. I don't typically recommend their supplements, but I do really, really enjoy all of every single one of their products that I've ever tried of the topical products. So huge, I mean, just like major game changer for a lot of people and just changing the quality of your skincare products. I also follow Kaylee pretty closely on Instagram, and she goes so above and beyond and all the things that she shares, and when it comes to makeup and shampoo and conditioner, and they are bringing back their shampoo and conditioner, I think, pretty soon. Their conditioner is the best conditioner I've ever tried in my entire life. And I say that as someone with long hair who it could get tangled for sure. And also, I mean, I take a lot of pride in my hair just from my history of Hashimoto's and hypothyroid type issues. And I lost a lot of my hair many years ago. And I think it looks great, pretty great now. So they've got some really good stuff. So I definitely go check them out if you want to dive deeper into a lot of the acne skincare kind of stuff. So hormonal breakouts, a variety of things that we can really look at here. So first and foremost, certain types of foods can be a huge contributor to this and can exacerbate underlying issues already going on. Gluten, dairy, for sure. And this is not for everyone for reference. And for some people, these are contributors. Dairy is a big one for a lot of people for reference. Quality of the dairy matters as well. Excess sugar, especially if you have some blood sugar dysregulation issues going into your cycle. I mean, man, and you get those cravings. Absolutely. This can be a huge contributor to the breakouts is the excess sugar. Eggs for some people. This used to be me. I would have an egg and it would be all like chin cheek kind of area, jawline area. And then 2 days later, if I didn't eat eggs again, it would go away. And then I ate an egg again. Doesn't happen to me now, so that my body has adjusted and I've healed enough where I can eat eggs. I don't eat eggs all the time. I don't like to eat eggs all the time. That's just a personal preference. But I do like eggs here and there. I think they're really good, especially good quality eggs. Really, there's so many good nutrients in them. Higher androgens, we'll say, and or testosterone. So when we think about this, something like PCOS, PMOS, the acne, especially the deeper cystic kind of acne, extremely common. This does not have to be just testosterone related. It can be more androgen related. Yes, there is a difference. I'm not going to get into the major differences on this episode because we can go down some big rabbit holes, and I want to talk about these symptoms and then zoom out, have enough time to zoom out. But his testosterone and or androgens can play a role here. Supporting drainage pathways goes a long way with this. This might seem counterintuitive, and it can be a thing. Some forms of birth control can actually make acne worse, while some others can make it better. Some of the ones I have found in my research that can contribute to make it worse, 2 IUDs, the Skyla and the Mirena, can, not for everyone, but can in some people make acne and skin issues worse. Implants, the birth control implant, for some people, once again, that can also make this worse. So if you are on one of those and you're dealing with a lot of skin issues, that can be a contributing factor. A little bit controversial one. We have talked about this before. If you go back to our blood test part 2 episode, we talk about vitamin D here a little bit more. If your vitamin D is too high, this can be a contributor to acne, specifically around your mouth. There are 2 markers to look at for vitamin D. Almost everyone only runs one. Even a lot of people in the functional health space only run one, the 25-OHC, which is fine, but we really need to be looking at both. And the reason I say this is they're supposed to be the same or right around the same number, which is why Western medicine doesn't run both, because they should be the same. Except they're not in a lot of people. And this goes into a vitamin D absorption type issue. And so if we're getting enough vitamin D, we're able to convert it from the 25-OHC, which is measured most commonly in lab work, into this other form called 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D or calcitriol. But then we're not absorbing that second form of vitamin D, that converted form. It'll just hang out there. And that can be a big contributor to the acne. Once again, specifically around the mouth is where this is often going to show up. So if you are struggling with acne around your mouth, especially around your cycles, then we may want to look at both of your vitamin D markers and just check in to see where those are, see if that is playing a role for you. There's a variety of things that can inhibit the vitamin D absorption. Chronic viral issues is a big one. So if you have a history of EBV type issues, that can play a role. Lyme would also be the same. There's also something that we call cell danger response, aka your cells are so stressed out that they refuse to absorb these things. From a basic standpoint, that is what is happening. Other nutrients, elevated zinc. Please, if you are taking zinc by itself, please stop. Please make sure you're taking it with copper, and also please make sure you're testing your levels to make sure you actually need it and not just willy-nilly kind of supplementing. Now, zinc deficiencies are actually incredibly common. Zinc and copper imbalances are incredibly common, but once again, we need to test. It is incredibly rare that for us, we would ever tell someone to supplement with just zinc, unless it's for a 3 or 4 day period because they're acutely sick. different. I'm talking longer term supplementation with zinc, especially not doing that balance between the zinc and the copper. So lips and your mouth is where we're typically going to see the elevated zinc if that's playing a role. Elevated B12, another reason not to overdo it on your B12, especially with the imbalances between your B vitamins, not just B12. B complexes, once again, can also contribute to acne. So elevated B12, typically in the lower half of your face is where we're going to see this. So think like cheekbones down, kind of on both sides is where we're typically going to see this. This also may show up kind of below your face, more of like the base of your face on the top of your neck. A lot of times that's where we will see a lot of this. So just double check in on that. Blood sugar dysregulation can also play a big role in this. So once again, another reason to take a really close look at blood sugar regulation. I also say with all of our clients, whether we explicitly mention it or not, blood sugar regulation is something we do with all of our clients. It is a non-negotiable. We're always looking at it from a nutritional standpoint first, but we also understand the other components of this in what can play a role and how the body may be asking to be supported, because an unstable blood sugar levels are very stressful on the body, incredibly stressful, and impact a variety of systems. So focusing on blood sugar regulation is hugely important. Now, if you have mold issues or mold toxicity, we've got to address the mold first. Mold will trigger blood sugar dysregulation issues. I also want to acknowledge, excuse me, the fact that hormones also influence blood sugar regulation. One of the things that happens for a lot of women is, so in perimenopause, is our progesterone drops, and that drops pretty steadily. I'm not going to say slowly, pretty steadily. Then our estrogen goes on this nice big giant roller coaster, which is why your emotions can be all over the place. But then as it finally starts to kind of go down here, that can cause insulin resistance. And blood sugar dysregulation in perimenopausal women is extremely common for a variety of reasons: lack of muscle mass, poor nutrition, lack of protein intake. All of these things also matter. Poor drainage pathways. All of these things matter. And so do the hormones as well. So this is where certain types of hormonal support can be beneficial, but it's typically not where I'd start from a blood sugar regulation standpoint. It's also a contributing factor to that menopause belly, that lower part of your belly getting big and not being able to lose any of that fat right there. That's a big reason. Cortisol also plays a really big role in this, especially as your adrenals start to take over some of your hormone production. Cortisol dysregulation issues can also play a role here in the acne. So if you've got elevated cortisol levels, and we cannot run a one-off blood test to know if you have low or high cortisol. That is a horrible way to look at this. We can look at symptoms for sure, but we need to do a salivary test or multiple tests throughout the day to really look at your curve or lack thereof. Now, here's the other thing. Even if you have quote unquote optimal cortisol levels, are you clearing your cortisol appropriately and or converting it to cortisone? And what does that look like? This is where another reason why a Dutch test, which is a functional hormone test, can really be helpful and beneficial. So there's a variety of things that we kind of want to look at here. So, and then also changes in the estrogen levels, just overall blanket statement, and then especially during perimenopause. This can also contribute to that hormonal acne. So I wanted to spend a couple extra minutes on that and talk through a handful of things, but that is incredibly common. It is also common to break out a little bit more during ovulation. If you break out during both ovulation and during your period, a lot of times there is a hormonal transition issue component going into this. Drainage pathways is the first place I would look. It's not the only thing that can play a role, but that is where I would typically start from let's dive into this a little bit deeper. Drainage pathways would be the first place that I would look with that. Okay. Next big topic I want to talk about: headaches and migraines. Hormonal headaches and migraines are extremely common. They are absolutely 1,000% not normal. Not normal at all. And so if you're one of the many, many, many women who get worse and or more headaches during ovulation, right before the start of your period, during your period, you are not alone, and there's something going on. There's something bigger, something deeper going on, and we really need to look at this. Couple big things that can happen. A sharp drop in estrogen is a major contributor to this. And this, once again, like this is typically going to happen during one of the shifts in our hormones, whether it's from ovulation, from our follicular phase to ovulation, from ovulation out of it into our luteal phase. I'd say that's the more common one, where we'll see a sharper drop in the estrogen that will trigger a headache and or migraine. Perimenopause is a big one here. If your hormones are if your estrogen especially is going on this giant roller coaster that it is going to go through during perimenopause, this is a really big one. This is a really, really, really big one. Now, if you get it just before the start of your period and or during your period, this is typically going to be poor estrogen metabolism or poor estrogen clearance. Drainage pathways are a big piece of this. We also want to understand what else is playing a role in your drainage pathways. What could be disrupting, de-optimizing kind of your drainage pathways, and what else is going on? Toxin overload issues are a big one that can really contribute to some issues. And that's just, we're talking baseline toxins, like just environmental toxins. Heavy metals toxicity adds another layer to this. Mold adds a way other level to this. So just some things to think about. Plastics, especially plastics, when we look at like BPAs and all these other types of plastics that are so prevalent in our world today, are so disruptive for our hormones. There's so many chemicals out there, and they are true endocrine hormone disruptors, and they wreak havoc on our pathways. I'll say one type of protocol we may do after we've done some of the bigger work, if someone is still struggling with some of the hormone clearance kind of drainage pathway issues, is we will use a product from Cellcore called Estro. This is a really cool product. I feel like it's a little bit of a sleeper product of theirs, but I had an amazing rep when that product first came out, and she gave me like the real lowdown on this product and how it works and why it works so well for so many people, including women in perimenopause, is it really works on the clearance pathways of your hormones, especially estrogen and testosterone. And a big reason in how it does that is it works on these plastics, and it helps to clear a lot of these plastics out. Now, we don't take it by itself. We take it in conjunction with a couple other things. Those couple other things are going to depend on the person. But this is a really, really big one. And a lot of times we will see if someone is dealing with a lot of these massive headaches and migraines, and some of the other work that we've done hasn't quite cut it, this can be a valuable next step. After testing to confirm this is what is happening, we may look at a protocol very similar to this to support more of the clearance and easier clearance of these hormones, because that can play a really big role here. The other thing that could play a big role is blood sugar dysregulation. So all of the other things that I've already mentioned, we want to dig into. Last one I really want to talk about is PMDD. And, even I'm going to say undiagnosed PMDD and or diagnosed PMDD and or massive shifts in your emotions and who you are during your luteal phase. So if you come out of ovulation and a week and a half before the start of your period, you're like, I feel like a totally different person. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel I don't feel like I am who I am in my body. I don't mentally and emotionally, like I just feel off. And this is happening consistently. This is what I'm talking about. If you want to quit your job and or break up with your significant other, disappear into a hole in the ground every single month during your luteal phase, this is another sign. If mentally and emotionally you go into a dark place, this might be dark and intrusive thoughts. This might be suicidal thoughts. This might be suicide ideation. Darkness looms over you during your luteal phase. This is what I'm talking about. And I will tell you, I experienced this for the first time in my life late last year. And I really went from being kind of back into a perimenopausal state into a full blown PMDD spiral. And it got dark. It got darker than it's gotten in my life in a really, really long time. And I spent a lot of my life in that really dark place, more from a mental and emotional standpoint, trauma standpoint, nervous system standpoint. And I've been out of that for a really long time with all the work that I've done. And I was there for about 2 to 3 months. I undiagnosed officially, but it was a dark place. About a week and a half before my period. And it was not fun. It was pretty scary, if I'm being really honest, because once again, I spent a lot of my life suicidal, and then a good portion of time after that, not super caring if I live or died. And I've been out of that place for a good chunk of time. And yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, medication, I thought about medication, even though medication really never worked for me. I thought about going on HRT. I even I even had someone mention it to me that, do you want progesterone to help with this? I said, give me another month and let me see if I can fix this on my own. And it's really scary. And if you don't know that this is happening or what this is, so scary. It is so, so, so scary. And I'll tell you, I knew what was happening. I figured it out really quickly. And it gave me a little bit of comfort, no, at least knowing what it was, but it was still very scary and not not a place I'd recommend for anyone. And I know so many women deal with this. I also want to share that a lot of women get misdiagnosed with a variety of other things. And I'm purposely not going to name some of these other things, but we'll call them mental and emotional disorders, dysfunctions, big picture. And they're not. There's a big difference between, having depression, having anxiety, and having this really be hormonally driven. And, there's also a thing where, if you deal with depression and or anxiety on a day-to-day basis, and it's manageable maybe within limits, but then once again, week and a half before the start of your period, things get significantly worse. There's a hormonal component to this. It is not just depression or anxiety. Unfortunately, in Western medicine, there are very few things and very little acknowledgement around this. Usually an SSRI is prescribed, is what I most commonly see. And sometimes it's just prescribed for the second half of your cycle, which I really don't love. And I don't find it can be helpful. It can kind of help some women kind of move through it a little bit while we're doing some other work. So I'm not discounting saying it's bad, and that's not an option because it always is. And I don't find it moves the needle for a lot of women enough where they can really feel like themselves and feel, won't say in control of our emotions because we're not really in control of our emotions, but you can still feel like yourself and feel like you're not a totally completely different person. And so big contributors to this, inflammation, just kind of big picture, broad spectrum inflammation going on here. Nervous system dysregulation. is a really big one. Super high stress is a really big one. Mine was a result of very high stress, and the very high stress during all of last year with, my significant other, his cancer diagnosis, cancer treatment, all kinds of work stuff going on. It was, my body just couldn't keep up with the level of stress, and it started to go downhill. And a piece of that was these handful of months of some real darkness in my luteal phase that I would describe very similar to PMDD. Almost always there is a progesterone component to this, and it is a sharp drop in progesterone. And usually we're going to have some of these other signs and symptoms of lowered progesterone with these PMDD kind of symptoms. There can also be, for some people, an increased insensitivity for your brain for these hormonal shifts. And if you notice, once again, like every time you're transitioning in your phase from the start of your period to ending your period to the start of your follicular phase, that would be the least common transitionary issue. From your follicular phase to ovulation, from ovulation to your luteal phase, from your luteal phase back to the start of your period, and so on. If you have sensitivities, you're noticing symptoms for most of these, I would say at least 3 out of 4 of these transitions, your brain is sensitive to the shift in hormones. Why is your brain sensitive? Well, there's a real variety of factors that can go into this. The metabolism and clearance of your hormones is a big one. So drainage pathways, blood sugar regulation can play a big role here. Leaky gut and or leaky brain is another really big one. And a lot of times we will see a lot of gut issues come along with this. I also had some gut issues still going on in my life around that time, between like the food poisoning I got last summer and then the flu or whatever I got early this year. My gut was in a weird spot for a little bit. And it wasn't until I finally that definitely made a big difference. Once I did 2 full moon parasite cleanses in a row. That made a big difference in my hormones. Big, big, big difference in my hormones. And starting the month after is when I really started to drop my own hormonal support and felt like my hormones were coming into a better position and have largely stayed that way. So that can be a really big thing here. So we want to look at gut health, drainage pathways, definitely your low progesterone. So we want to look at kind of all of these things. Also say all of the nutrients that feed into your brain. Fatty acids can play a really big role here. A lot of your B vitamins, especially your B6, plays a really big role here. A lot of these things are happening in your gut as well. So we really want to look at this. So those are the major symptoms that I really wanted to talk about. So let's zoom out big picture here. So big common themes, blood sugar regulation. So we want to look at, obviously, nutrition plays a really big role here. Clean up your diet if you can, first and foremost. Just start to limit the packaged processed foods, especially. It's a really, really big one. Start to drop some of the excess sugar. I'll tell you, if you have a lot of sugar cravings, start by increasing your protein first and foremost. That usually goes a long way. Then bump up your fiber. That also usually goes a long way. If there are still a lot of sugar cravings, oftentimes we need to look at your gut health. And a lot of times there are gut overgrowth issues playing a really big role here. Our gut overall plays a massive role in our hormones. By the way, our hormones also play a big role in our gut health. In chronic constipation type issues, after we've done drainage pathway support work, nervous system work, maybe even some pelvic floor work, a lot of mindfulness, nervous system, feeling safe in your body, letting things go, all that kind of stuff. If there's still lingering issues, oftentimes there's a hormonal component to this, specifically with estrogen levels. So that can play a really big role. Some women notice their bowel movements get better and improve going on HRT, specifically estrogen. And it's because estrogen especially plays a big role in our gut. So they play off of each other. We usually start with gut health first and foremost. and then move into the hormones, because the gut plays a bigger role in hormones than hormones play in gut health, in my opinion. So that's why we typically start with the gut health, especially if there's a lot of nutrient deficiencies. Like we can supplement all day long, but if you're not actually absorbing these things, what's kind of the point? So gut health, also working on your liver and drainage pathways overall, plays a big role in this. So we want to look at gut health. Toxin load and drainage pathways is a really big one. If you've got mold issues, I can give you every hormone supplement under the sun and nothing's going to change. Mold disrupts the entire body, including hormones. I can give you, once again, every supplement under the sun, every little tip and trick. Nothing's going to move the needle until we address the mold. Your nervous system and trauma history play a really big role here. I'll tell you, I have never done as we'll say, a trauma-informed coach and or energy healer. I have never worked with a woman who has had some hormonal imbalance and some hormonal issues that hasn't also had some decent sacral chakra issues. That might look like sexual trauma. And let's be honest here. And if you don't know this, by the way, most women have had sexual trauma in one way or another. The number of women who have had some sort of sexual abuse or sexual trauma, astronomically high. I'll say, if I had to put a number on it, I'm going with the 95%, which sucks and is crazy unfortunate, and is also the reality of what I have personally seen, both from as a practitioner, but also in a lot of my healing groups and a lot of the healing work I've done around other women and different things like that. And that doesn't have to be the big R word. It could be, just agreeing to have sex when you weren't actually ready, feeling pressured, but also feeling like you couldn't say anything, having a weird and not super comfortable sexual experience or a variety of sexual experiences, being shamed for your sexual experiences and or lack thereof for reference. There's so many factors that go into this, and sometimes it's not the capital T trauma that we're kind of led to believe. And I'll tell you once again, like a personal story, because I feel very comfortable talking about myself. I have had sexual trauma. I have been sexually assaulted on multiple occasions. I have a decent sexual trauma history. And of course, that has played a big role in my hormone health overall. Is that a reason why I was in perimenopause at 29? Yeah, of course it was. There are other factors as well. And that trauma history has played a significant role in my life overall. And, I spent years working on really just that piece. It is still in my cycle and we'll say in my rotation of things that I continue to work on. I've talked about Christina Race's or Christina the Channel's energetic detox program, and I'm almost done with it now. But there's one that she has a womb clearing meditation in there. Holy moly, with all the work that I've done around my sacral chakra, just sexual trauma, yeah, I was in an abusive relationship for about a year that was physically and mentally and emotionally abusive. And working around that, I've done extensive, in-depth, significant work around all of this. And the amount of things that came up for me doing this I probably did it like 3 or 4 weeks ago now, this womb clearing. I had so much come up for me. So much come up for me. It's wild. And it's layered. Healing, especially from a mental and emotional standpoint, this is very, very layered. It is very much like a giant kind of onion where, we have to work in layers. And it's, like some of these things come back around because we're ready to heal them at different layers or different levels. And so if you're doing some of that kind of work and you're like, I still feel like I'm dealing with this, You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. There's a lot of layers to peel back from this. And especially for most of us as women, I mean, what we're taught early on, I know especially like my generation and up, is wild. I mean, I carry pepper spray in my car. And that's sometimes done for a while. Anytime I'm walking alone in the dark, I always have my keys and I always have a key, laced between my fingers, just in case. Even if I'm walking in super, super safe areas that I have known for a very long time, I still do that because I was taught you have to protect yourself. And probably part of that was growing up with a single mom, who had her own sexual trauma and sexual history and all of the things that went into her trauma. And, some of that was absolutely passed down to me. So, but we're also taught that. I mean, don't dress too provocative. Don't drink too much. Don't do this. You got to watch out. You've got to always be aware. Yes, and what does that do for our baseline nervous systems? Being told that we always have to be so careful. The thing that went around, this was not too long ago, I would say within the last year of, this question of for women, if you were trapped in the woods with something, would you rather be trapped with a bear or with a man? Why did most women choose a bear over a man? There are reasons, and they are deep underlying societal things that we have been taught because men can hurt us. And I'm not talking just physically, I'm talking deep psychological. And it's not just men, by the way, this is like all relationships, but men do typically have more power, more strength than us as women. That's part of like biologically how they're built versus how we are built. And that's not saying across the board, that's not saying 100%. We have so many superpowers that come along with us. And once again, there's this deep ingrained kind of notion of don't be sexual, but be sexual enough. And, you have to be careful, and it's your job to protect yourself from other people, specifically men, and what they may want to do and do to hurt you and all these other things. So like this is pretty deeply ingrained in our societies, and this can be passed down. So some of this may not just be your trauma for reference. So if we look at all of this, we need to look at overall stress levels. What can we take out of our stress bucket? Can we help to delegate different things? Can we ask for help? That also goes a long way in our hormone health. What can we get better at our sleep and bedtime routines? Can we stop with the doom scrolling for 2 hours at night? Can we be a little bit lighter in just what we're consuming and have more positivity in our lives? What kind of work are we doing? What kind of environment are we working in? What kind of environment are we living in? And I'm talking both from a physical standpoint, but also from, you know, are you constantly being talked down to? Are you being yelled at work all the time? Like, are you in a really toxic environment? Who are the kinds of people that you surround yourselves with by choice and maybe not so much by choice? All of these things matter. So when it comes to hormone health, it's not as simple as, oh, and I am going to give you some practical things from a hormone perspective in just a moment, but it's not always as simple as, oh, just take DIM, just take inositol, just take this, just take berberine, there are so many layers and so many factors, which is why in our practice, it is non-negotiable. When we work with a client, we're looking at nutrition, lifestyle, movement, nervous system, trauma patterns, and then bigger root causes of other things going on. Because all of these things matter for all of us in our overall health, especially when it comes to our hormone health. So, couple more practical things that we can really look at. Estrogen metabolism type issues, dark leafy greens go a really long way. Drainage pathway support work goes a really long way. Castor oil packs, man, are those phenomenal. We see so much improvement in women just using castor oil packs and having their periods be so much better and or symptoms leading up to their period being so much better. Typically, we will do that over the liver However, if you have a lot of inflammation, if you get a lot of the cramping, belly pain, different things like that, you can absolutely do it over your lower part of your belly as well. I know specifically Queen of the Thrones, they aren't the only company out there that has like these pre-made packs. They do have a variety of different ones though. They have big ones that go over your belly versus like more regular sized ones that go over your liver. And they have little ones that go over your thyroid. So those can be very supportive. One or all of those can be very supportive. Epsom salt baths, dry brushing, rebounding, manual lymphatic work, coffee enemas, all these things, when done appropriately for you and your body, can be very supportive of drainage pathways. Strength training is extremely supportive for hormone health. Blood sugar included, but also in just overall hormones. So this is another reason that strength training can be awesome and super good for you when done appropriately for you and your body. With the lowered progesterone, Chastry or Vitex, they are the same thing. They are just called two different names, depends on who you talk to, which one you're going to get, can be very supportive for women in supporting progesterone levels. I'll say if you are premenopausal and not in perimenopause, specifically, this can be very supportive. And it's can be nice progesterone support without actual progesterone and needing actual progesterone. And by the way, sometimes that is very helpful. Different types of progesterone support can be very helpful. This is one where I commonly see people do well with. Everyone's body is different though. So, but that can be supportive, especially just in the second half of your cycle, maybe start at day 12 or 14 of your cycle and then take it through day 1 or day 2 of your period. Always be sure to check with your doctor before starting or changing any supplements and or medications. Have to stay that for legal reasons. Okay, so chastity can be really good. Something to help regulate your cortisol can also be really good. This might look like a supplement at night called Cortisol Manager. It helps just naturally lower your cortisol levels. This might look like ashwagandha for some. This might look like rhodiola for some. I've also found a reishi to be particularly helpful in just helping the body kind of wind down and just be a little bit more relaxed in the evening. So reishi could also be supportive. Doing some different things in the morning, like adrenal cocktails, are a nice food-based kind of approach. Yes, there are supplement versions of that, but you can also do food-based versions. That can be super helpful as well, especially in the morning and or like late morning, early afternoon, depending on the person. Sometimes we'll do one a day, sometimes we'll do two, depending on the person, but those can be very supportive, especially of adrenal health. If you are in perimenopause, adrenal cocktails can be really great for you in particular. I do adrenal cocktails every day. Anytime I'm under a lot of stress, which, stress for me has been pretty high the last couple of years. So I've been on adrenal cocktails pretty regularly and have found them and continue to find them to be very supportive for me and my body. Magnesium glycinate in particular, also very supportive when taken in the evening. Can help naturally bring down cortisol levels. Just magnesium is needed for a lot of things. So that can be really good. Be careful. The magnesium calm supplement that I forget the name of the company, please always read what forms of these nutrients these are coming in. Magnesium oxide and magnesium citrate are stool softeners. They're only stool softeners. So different forms of magnesium do different things. If we're going for the calming, the relaxing, the mood, magnesium glycinate, it's a great starting point. Now, there are many other forms of magnesium that are also very great. Depends on the person and what we're kind of looking for. But a pure magnesium glycinate can go a really long way. Seed cycling can also be super, super helpful. There's a lot of information online, a couple little tips and tricks. One of the big ones that I see, one of the big mistakes I see people making with seed cycling is the seeds need to be ground up. The fresher the grind, the better. Getting the whole seeds and then grinding them up just right before you eat them and or just 1 to 3 days ahead of time goes a long way. Doing it more than that, so if you're going to do like a whole week's worth, not quite as effective. So the fresher the grind, the better. But it focuses on, we get pumpkin and flax, for part of our cycle, we get sesame and sunflower seeds, and on the other part of our cycle, and we just kind of rotate these on a daily basis. You do have to take them on a daily basis, and it usually takes about 2 to 3 months for us to start seeing results. I did do this ahead of getting off of birth control and found it to be very helpful. And I did it for a few months after getting off of birth control. Once again, found it to be very supportive, very helpful with that. And then also keep in mind, over exercising is a big one. Not exercising enough is another really big one that can impact hormones negatively, both of those. Not eating enough, very impactful in your hormones in a negative way. Eating too much or eating a lot of garbage, eating a lot of processed things, eating a lot of sugars and chemicals and all that kind of stuff, none of that is great for our hormone health. So those are some of the big things that can be very supportive when it comes to hormones, just overall. Now, once again, everyone is different. Everyone's body is different. All of our hormones are a little bit different, and they're always changing. And that can be very frustrating as well for a lot of women. It is how our bodies work. And unfortunately, our society is built around men's hormones, which operate on 24-hour cycles, versus our give or take 28-day cycles. So keep that in mind. Frustration is normal with all of this. Give yourself a lot of grace, a lot of compassion. And if you need help, we are always here. We offer free consultations if you need help digging into a little bit more of these so we can take a deeper look. And when it comes to testing hormones, we can run blood work. Depending on what we're looking at, we may want to look at different times to run blood labs. Also, remember, blood labs are a moment in time. Our hormones don't always operate the same from moment to moment, which is where some of the functional testing can be particularly supportive. Also looking at metabolism and methylation of these hormones, we get a really good look at that when we run something like a Dutch test. And there's also a salivary test that we can look at for hormones, which also give us more information than just the moment in time from blood work. There's also, for some women, there's called cycle mapping, and that way we're doing testing throughout the month, and we can get a little bit more insight into seeing if we're having like very stark drops in hormones, especially around the PMDD kind of things that we may look at. So that those can also be different things that we may want to look at. If you want to run a Dutch test, we do have that option. I will put our Rupa store below. There's a few different ones. I'll say most commonly we will run the Dutch Plus. For a lot of women, however, there is just a sex hormone metabolite one that's a little bit cheaper. We will run that for some people. And then the cycle mapping is pretty expensive. We don't run that one very often. We'll typically run the Dutch Plus, but really depends on the options, but we will put that below in case you want to take a look into that testing. And then if you need help with blood work or any other testing, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would want to do the free consultation first, but all of our labs and testing is run at cost, meaning we make no money off of that. Whatever we pay, that's what we charge you. So that can make a big difference for a lot of people. So feel free to, if you need help and support with that, let us know. We're happy to help with that. I think that's where we're going to wrap up today. Thank you for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really, really, really do mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.